I love a company that embraces and indulges the randos, the crazy people, people like me. So BEELINK is doing with the ME Pro. They sent me the ME Pro ahead of time. This is not a paid review or anything like that. We're gonna put this thing to the test. It's based on the Intel N95. That's relatively low end. If you're gonna pick up one of these, definitely would recommend the N150. It's about 20% faster. But I'm curious if this would work as an off-site ZFS replication host. That's sort of the minimum bar. Now the N95 can also do Jellyfin because it's got, built-in Intel graphics, modest Intel graphics. So it can also be a media server. And I'm gonna put two 27 terabyte hard drives in here. These are from Server Part Deals, but again, not a sponsored video. It turns out I buy a lot of things from Server Part Deals, and they were like, hey, wait a minute, you also have a YouTube channel, so they sponsored me for some stuff a while back. We might do something again soon. I don't know, we'll see. But for now, we're gonna put those in here and see how it goes. Now, BEELINK is not any stranger to controversy. When we looked at the ME, the one that's based on NVMe Flash, the video for that is here. I said, hey, this might have a bit of a power budget. Don't go crazy putting a power budget constraint problem. Don't go crazy putting M.2 in there. And that was really controversial, it turns out, because some people did try to put higher end M.2 devices in there and there wasn't enough power budget. But that turned out to be a bigger issue than really I probably should have pointed that out a little bit more completely, instead of trusting that you're picking up the words that I'm putting down. I don't have to repeat myself and all that sort of stuff. This is different in that BEELINK is leaning into modularity. And that is why I'm kind of interested in this device more than anything. When it ships, it's gonna come with a power brick that they stuffed inside the drive bays. It's 2 drive bays. When I'm rocking lots of mechanical hard drives, I like more than 2 drive bays, but you have to admit the space gray configuration here is interesting and very compact. It has one USB Type A port on the front that is 5 gigabit. You got HDMI at the rear, 2 USB Type A, USB Type C, combination headphone microphone port. You also have a 5 gigabit LAN port. Now the N95 pushing that 5 gigabit LAN port is a little bit of a challenge. It's only 4 cores. The N150 will do it will be more likely to be able to do that. But remember, pretty much all mechanical hard drives of the last age are about 250 megabytes per second. You get the dual actuator ones, those can do 500 megabytes per second. You could put flash in here, SATA flash, but it seems like everybody has stopped making SATA flash. So, 4 terabytes, maybe 8 terabytes. But yeah, not a lot of options there. This also comes with a tool on the bottom because it's all hex screws. So there's a little tool on the bottom that you can use to take it apart, which is nice. Now, normally for the drives, you only have to take out 2 screws per tray, so 4 screws total. There's also 4 screws that are holding in the motherboard. The motherboard slides out, makes it easy to dust and clean, but it also makes it easy to upgrade. BEELINK says that they're planning on, depending on how the community responds, doing several different versions of this with slide-out trays, including other versions that have more 3.5-inch bays. I think 5 or 6 mechanical hard drive bays is the sweet spot. I wouldn't say no to 8, but I get that, there's a lot of people in our community that don't want the heat and noise of 8 drives sort of running continuously. But from a cost optimization standpoint and failure analysis, like 27 terabytes being trapped in an interface that can only do 250 megabytes per second means that when the drive is operating properly, you're looking at about 2 to 3 days to get your stuff off of a drive. Now, if the drive is not working properly, I've seen them take much, much longer. And so then it becomes a question of redundancy and failover, and like, how does that work? If you want to do a deep dive more into those kind of things, you can look at our past level 1 diagnostic videos where we've helped other channels recover their data or set up their storage server. The rubber tool holder at the bottom also hides 2 screws. And you can see at the bottom here we have 3 M.2. It's bundled with 512 gigabyte M.2, but then there's 2 and 3 that you can use for storage, more storage. So to take the motherboard out, you do have to take the 2 screws out. You do not have to take out the M.2.
and the 4 screws at the back. So it takes 6 screws to get this out. And there's even a little, like, BeElink does a lot of really good engineering here. Let's count the stuff. Metal case, good for heat dissipation, has a pretty good built-in front dust filter. There's clear CMOS and recessed holes at the front, 1 type A. This is a relatively large fan for the configuration. The larger the fan, the less maintenance. It's a blower style fan, and it's going to be very effective to pull air in this way and exhaust it that way. 2 drives, these drives get relatively warm. However, I can already tell you, this fan does a good job keeping the drives reasonably cool, as well as the rest of the system. The N150 is not a high wattage part. I mean, Intel says it's like 7 or 8 watts. Reality is like it bursts to 15. It's pretty good. The drives have a thermal connection to the aluminum, so this acts as a pretty effective heat sink overall to be able to dissipate heat from this thing. And like I say, this is modular, so if this dies, you could get a replacement from BeElink, presumably. If there's an upgrade in the future, you could swap this out, because the N95, fairly anemic. I think they're building that in. Even the N150 is relatively anemic with only 4 cores, but this thing has 12 gigabytes of memory built in. That part is not upgradable, but 12 gigabytes of memory. It's pretty awesome, especially in our RAM drought. Also uses a standard CR2032 battery, which is replaceable right there. So if you won't keep the clock or complains about, you know, losing CMOS settings or whatever, you can replace that and you'll be all fixed. And this will be a cool thing if BeElink is not doing this. Publish the pinouts and the specifications for this. There's some really amazing services in China that will let you order just-in-time PCB delivery. This breaks out to SATA on the back there, but it looks like they're using a PCIe chip to do SATA control. So like PCIe from this, and then this thing is what turns this into 2 SATA lanes. So what if you built your own PCB and you could just slam this thing down in your own custom stuff as a module? That could be a lot of fun, and then people will sell this. This could turn into a standard depending on what BeElink does. But let's get this thing put back together, and you know, here's our accessory box that was hiding, you know, the power brick was in one. I mean, they really did a lot of work to try to, you know, ship as small a box as possible. You gotta get your margin where you can get it, right? In case you're wondering about network benchmarking, 5 gigabit, you can achieve 5 gigabit. Your bottleneck is gonna be your disks though, but I'm very impressed by the CPU utilization. You know, we're basically using 36% of 1 core, which isn't too bad. Another awesome feature of the BeElink design, rubber grommets built in for the drives. So this thing's gonna be super quiet even if you got loud drives. Now, if loud drives are a concern, definitely opt for the helium-filled drives. You can get helium and non-helium drives for up to 10 terabytes at this point. Probably 12 and 16 terabyte non-helium is on the horizon, just cheaper drives. But the helium drives are always quieter, and generally they last much longer, much more durable. Now each individual tray is labeled SO2, and the slide is also labeled so you can get it in the right spot. Boom! In case you forget, the really short screws are the ones that hold the M.2 heatsink door on. And for cooling, they drilled some really tiny holes on the bottom here, so keep an eye on those when you dust this thing. Power utilization, 45 watts in a torture test, 55 to 60 watts when I'm also pegging the hard drives at, you know, full access as well as the system. So we're pretty far under our 100 watt power brick, which is great. And you know, that doesn't have M.2. You add, you know, it's gonna be another 30 watts for M.2. Worst case scenario, yeah, that gets you to something close to 100 watts. The latency on this thing is fantastic, 51 nanoseconds. It's only a single channel. It's Alder Lake, basically, with the N95. The N150 is a little newer. But DDR5 9577? That is absurdly fast. Now, as this thing comes with Windows, I mean, it's a little slow. 4 cores, 4 threads. Windows is a lot of overhead on a platform like this. You would be better off with TrueNAS or Linux or anything like that. 4 cores, 4 threads, that is asking a lot. A long time ago, we did a video with an ASRock motherboard based on the N100. And we did the Forbidden router with that, and we gave 2 cores and 2 threads to the Forbidden router, and you know, blah, 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 it was fine. But fine, quotation marks. And so if you're gonna run this as a home server, I definitely recommend an all-in-one operating system that will let you access the built-in iGPU for decode. Even though it does have HDMI out, I'm skeptical that there's enough horsepower here to do 4K decoding plus Jellyfin running at the same time for remote clients. So if you're thinking living room machine hooking up to your TV,
I think that's going to be a more doable proposition at 1080p, but 4K, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for this platform. If you pick up one of these and you reconfigure it or do something different for your operating system, or you want to show off your home theater setup, definitely come to the Level 1 forums, because that could be a whole other separate video in and of itself. Using AIDA64 for the torture test, the temperatures on this thing were fine. It was basically inaudible. It was very difficult to do any kind of sound or noise measurement on this because it's not really louder than the ambient sound that I have here in the studio. So that's very, very impressive engineering from BEELINK, in other words. The CPU did not throttle, even for extended torture testing, even doing drive torture testing, even dumping a lot into it. I was also surprised that even it's with 100% CPU utilization, so not, you know, no background tasks, but also iPerf 3 was able to keep that 5 gigabit NIC fully saturated. There's 3 NICs in this, the i226V, that's the 2.5 gig interface, and then you've got a Realtek 5 gigabit, and then there's also a MediaTek Wi-Fi, MediaTek Wi-Fi 6 MT7920. So there's a Wi-Fi 6 adapter built in on the top side of that motherboard in there somewhere. I personally would like a little bit more horsepower, but this is enough horsepower to do ZFS replication off-site. So if you installed Linux, and you ran Tailscale to get it on your tailnet, and you're doing ZFS send for ZFS replication, remote replicas, here's how you could have 27 or 50 terabytes if you're willing to run without any redundancy, because, you know, it's a remote mirror. It's a pretty impressive little piece of kit. It's going to depend on how much you can procure it for and how that value stacks up for other sort of devices that are based around the N95 or the N100. For an N95 or an N100 device, it is very competently engineered. It's barely bigger than a stack of hard drives. It's very impressive engineering work from BEELINK. I hope they continue to iterate on this idea, because I think they're onto something, and they go a little bigger, keep the modularity. I think it's going to be good. I'm one of those Level 1. It's been a quick look at the Me Pro from BEELINK. If you have a specific project or something you want me to try that the community can, you know, get excited about or rally behind, come to the forum, because we will absolutely do that. I'm one of this Level 1. If you have any questions, or, you know, want to work on a project or something like that, hit me up. I'm signing out, and I'll see you in the forums.